What's the vibe in Michigan today after the national championship win? And then, Russell, help me understand J.J. McCarthy. I know some people have him being drafted in the first round. I don't see any of it. Hi, and help me with those two questions.
Well, Patrick, hello. Thanks for, as always, the kind words and always bringing me on to talk a little football. And you had me at parlays, so I'm sold. But, yeah, the vibes are good around here. I'm not a Michigan fan myself. I'm a Michigan State guy. But the vibes are good right now. I mean, we're talking about a 15-0 team. And this is a team that, you know, they had some adversity. We all know about it. And they overcame it, as we saw last night. And I kind of had a feeling that was going to happen when Vegas had the line at 4.5 for a week plus, and then all of a sudden here we are about an hour or two before kickoff, and they bumped the line up a point to 5.5. I kind of had a feeling. But, yeah, with McCarthy starting there, I mean, he's definitely a draftable prospect. I just don't necessarily see the first-round buzz just like yourself. I don't really understand that part. I think he needs to get better with a lot more touch, kind of similar to Michael Penix. The key with McCarthy is he doesn't have the injury history that Penix Jr. has as far as, you know, some of the stuff with the knee, the shoulder. We saw what happened last night with the ankle and potentially the ribs there. So I think the big thing with McCarthy is throwing with more touch. He can throw with plenty of velocity, the mobility and the ability to extend plays is really impressive. But I don't see the first round stuff. I really don't, because once you get through kind of the top 5 and maybe even the top 10 of the draft, I don't know really where the quarterbacks fall. I mean, maybe Las Vegas, maybe Denver, they're at 12 and 13. Again, maybe Pittsburgh at 23. But outside of that, I don't see teams in the back end of the first round searching for quarterback help, because it seems like every team there kind of has that established quarterback. And maybe the fits the Rams at 22 if Stafford, you know, decides that in another year or two he's done. Maybe they got somebody waiting in the wings. But there's lots to like with McCarthy. I just think he's more so of a day 2, day 3 type player. And then ultimately they've got a lot of draftable players there at Michigan. I don't know if you want me to go down that rabbit hole, but start with McCarthy. Yeah, I mean, I don't see the first round stuff either.
Russell, you mentioned it, the Rams and the Lions Sunday night in Detroit. They'll be playing each other. Just for people like myself who are not from the area, give us a sense of what the vibe is like for a Lions team hosting a playoff game that hasn't won a playoff game since 93, right, guys? I think that was the last time they won a playoff game. Mm-hmm. Just give us a sense of what the pulse is like. Patrick was back home over Christmas. He kind of gave us a taste of what it's like. But now you got it with Stafford coming back to his old stomping grounds.
The vibes are good. I mean, the vibes are very good. We're looking at a team that tied the franchise record for wins in a regular season with 12, which is kind of feels like a low bar when you look at other teams across the league in their history the last 20, 30 years. But it's been a great season. I mean, if it ended on Sunday night, it's been a great year. But it's one of those where it's like, get us the playoff win. Let's take the next step. The playoffs and the division title are a huge step, but we would love to see that win, especially at home at Ford Field. And it's no better than Matthew Stafford. And, I mean, it's so fitting. I mean, it kind of fits the script that he's coming home for the first time in the playoffs. Couldn't get it done here for a home playoff game, and maybe he's the guy that they beat to do that, or maybe he's the guy that beats them to kind of end all of this. But I feel good. I think the fans feel good, and it's one of those where it just, to me, guys, it feels like Dan Campbell is going to get this team right for this matchup. I don't know about the rest of the playoffs, but this specific matchup, they've had this one circled. The opening round, wild card weekend, at home, division title. They've done everything. They've checked a bunch of boxes, but getting to the next round is a box they haven't checked. And I think they're determined. This is a determined group trying to get back to Dallas, and they want to resurrect or rekindle that and figure out what they did wrong as far as the officiating and how can they fix that and right that wrong and go ahead and get that win in Dallas. And I don't know if they do that in 2 weeks, but we're not counting chickens here before they hatch. We're focused on the Rams, and I think that's what the Lions are going to do. So the vibes are good.
Russell Brown, the Lions Wire, also covers the draft for Fantasy Pros and Betting Pros, talking Lions hosting the Rams. So DraftKings right now is showing Detroit laying 3.5 and 51.5 on the total. Let's talk matchup. How do you see this matchup between the Rams and Lions playing out?
Man, I will say whenever I place a bet on the Lions, it does not go well.
Yes.
So I will not be betting on this game. But that said, I like this matchup for a couple of different reasons. This is a Rams defense that has some young players there in Kobe Turner and Byron Young, two rookies that both between the two of them have 17 sacks this year. They obviously have Aaron Donald, but they only have a 32% pressure rate according to Sports Info Solution, and that's 29th in the NFL. And much of that is simply because they don't send a lot of blitzes. They are simply a 3-man, 4-man type team as far as pressures go. And a lot of what they do is based out of their dime defense. 17% of their defenses ran out of the dime defense. So they are consistently having 5 to 6 defenders from the defensive backfield on the field. So they have plenty of speed, but that's going to open up a lot in the run game. And we all know how the Lions run the football. The Rams allow about 120 yards rushing per game. I think that the Lions, if they can stick to the ground game, keep Matthew Stafford off the field, that would be great. But furthermore, this is a zone defense that Jared Goff gets to play against. The Rams run zone coverage 63% of the time. That's 11th most in the NFL. And Goff, he shreds man coverage, but he does particularly well against zone coverage. Going into the Cowboys game 2 weeks ago, he was completing almost 72% of his passes. He had almost 2,800 yards passing against zone defenses. He has thrown almost all of his interceptions against zone defense, but it's a zone defense type of league. It's hard to find a lot of man defenders. So I like this matchup overall. Losing Sam LaPorta, we'll see if he plays. But if the Lions lose a game because of simply a tight end, then we have bigger problems. We have one of the best receivers in the game. We have two of the better package duos in the game with the rushing attack. And the offensive line is so much improved from the last meeting in 2021. Just for the people out there, in 2021 when they played, the starting offensive line was Penei Sewell, Jonah Jackson, Evan Brown, Vaitai, and Matt Nelson. So, and keep in mind, Amon-Ra St. Brown did not have a catch in that game. So I think, Matt Stafford sure will throw the football around, but I think at the end of the day, the Lions defense finds a couple of stops, maybe gets a turnover, and the rushing attack wins this game for Detroit.
You mentioned Sam LaPorta. What is your gut? Do you think he goes or he's unable to play?
If they played Monday night, maybe he gives it a go, but it's going to be tough. 7 days after that, maybe he dresses just simply to keep them, on their toes, but I don't see it happening. I mean, one bad move, one low tackle, and you potentially ruin him for next year. And I understand, you go all in for this year, but I don't think you can ruin his young career and potentially, specifically next year for just this one game. I think he will probably sit, and I think we'll see a lot of Brock Wright and James Mitchell.
Russell, what was 2 minutes here? What was the overriding opinion back home with how Campbell approached Week 18, playing all his starters?
Well, it's obviously a mixed crowd. I think, depending on who you talk to, they understand why he played his starters. And then obviously you have a lot of people that are like, bonehead move, the chances were low of getting the 2 seed. But, I think people and fans forget that this is a team that was a week removed from the Dallas Cowboy game. It felt like an incredibly long week last week. And I think it was one of those where it felt like maybe we were 3 or 4 weeks removed from the Dallas game, but we were not. We were a week removed, and they had something to prove, and they wanted to beat somebody up. That's just the way Campbell operates. We know that. And they had something to play for, too. I mean, this was the 2 seed on the line. Had he have not played his starters and they lost the game, and both the Eagles and Cowboys lost, then he doesn't get the 2 seed, and everybody's like, well, we could have had 2 home playoff games. So I think the vibes were a little bit mixed, but I think it's one of those where I think people really understood, and he had to do what he had to do, and it's just the unfortunate nature of the business. Guys get hurt.
Russell Brown, Lions wire writer at Russ NFL Draft. As I mentioned, betting pros and fantasy pros covering the draft as well. He's doing a hell of a job. Thank you, Russell. Enjoy the football this weekend, and we'll talk to you soon, okay?
Go to VSiN.com/subscribe to become a VSiN Pro subscriber today.